My name is Joel. It's a privilege to be speaking to you this morning. Last week I went through 3 microphones, so we'll see what happens this week. But this is brand new, so we should be all good. I hope you've warmed up. It's a bit chilly, isn't it? Apologies, just as a public service announcement, but this is not. We've talked about being a family together. We want to welcome people into our home. It's nice welcoming people into a warm space. It's not our like. We're not trying to whittle people down by making it as cold as possible and just see who we're left with at the end of the winter. Unfortunately, the heating's not working properly. It's in the process of getting fixed. That's why you have to put up with it. If you're lucky enough to have sat next to one of the small little radiators, Gina turned up this morning and was like, "Oh yes, I found my seat." As she found the seat next to one of the little radiators. Apologies if you're not next to one of those. Okay. Oh, right. It's warmer than in my house though. So. But if you are in my group, Tom was saying about groups, we are running a group this way. We are putting the heating on. When you come round, we will put the heating on. I will light the fire. Don't worry, it's just for the rest of the week we live in Arctic temperatures. Okay. So we are in this series at the moment. We're going through Sundays together in the book of Romans, Romans 12. If you've got your Bible, you can turn to it. If not, the words will come up on the screen. And it's picking us up from where we left off. Last term, as we looked through the creed together, we looked at what are the foundations for us as a family. What are we holding on to? What do we believe together as Redeemer? And it's taken us, and we're thinking about this, the start of this year, the culture of the family that we're building here. How are we working this out? And so we've called this series rather, straightforward church culture. Right? We're looking at the culture, but the key thing is that the tagline attached to it is by default or by design, because we want to be deliberate in the culture that we are creating here. We don't want to just fall into a default pattern or just whatever we might fall into. We want to be intentional about who we're becoming, where we're going, how we treat one another, how we treat people who come in as guests into this family. Because if we're not intentional, then we'll slip into all sorts of wrong ways or unhelpful cultures. So just for example, I don't know if any of you have been watching the Australian Open recently, but Novak Djokovic, he didn't just look at a tennis racket one day and say, "Oh, I fancy winning multiple Grand Slams and being really good at tennis. Maybe I'll just see how it goes over the next 20 years." Right? That's not how it happens. I've been watching the American football the last couple of years, getting into it, and I don't understand a lot of the rules, but I do understand that the quarterback who throws it has got to be incredibly skilled and precise in knowing where his running backs or where the tight end is going to be up the field. And again, he doesn't just look at an American football and say, "Oh, that's probably easy. I'll work my way up, and I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll see how it goes." No, there's an intentionality if you're going somewhere, if you want to produce something, if you want to see something happen, we're not just going to slip into it. We want to be designed, we want to be intentional. And the passage that we're going to read in a moment is just a helpful way of saying it's a helpful pointer for us. When people walk in here, what do we want them to see? What do we want them to experience? What is the culture in this place? But it's going to take more than us just saying, "Oh yeah, we'll read it," and "Oh yeah, well I've read it. Oh yeah, I'll be loving. I'll try and honor people a bit," and then we just see how it goes. Well, no, we've got to be intentional. We've got to be deliberate. We want to see the culture design that we want. And maybe that means giving up other things that are good or sacrificing on some things that we might like doing, but we want to be deliberate about the culture that we're going for, who we're becoming. And so, the passage we're about to read, it's an exhortation. It's Paul is calling the church in Rome to a standard of Christian living. So just have that in mind as we were singing just a moment ago. We were singing to God, but also to one another, reminding one another of who God is and what He's done, how great He is, singing the names of who God is. And as we read this passage, we're reading it to ourselves, but you can imagine you're also reading it to the people who stand around you. We're encouraging each other. This is how we want to live. This is what we want to be like as a family together. So can I ask you to stand? Hopefully if you didn't know this verse, you're becoming a bit more familiar with it, with these verses as we've gone through these weeks. And we're just going to read verses 9 to 14. Okay. Let love Oh, it's up on the screen. Good. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Thank you. You can sit down. So this is what it looks like, or part of what it looks like for us to be a family together. This is hopefully what we want in the DNA of who we are, what's going to shape us, what we're building together here, because who we are, what's in our DNA will flow out from us. It will flow out from in the projects that we run, like I said before, in the staff that we might appoint, or in the churches that we might plant. In everything we do, we want to be grounded in who God has called us to be, so that when we do things, it's not out of any other thing, but it's out of who God has called us to be, what he has spoken to us about. And so, like I said, we want to be intentional. So I wonder, the last couple of weeks, how have you got on in loving people, right? We talked about we're on a culture of love in this place. How have you done at loving people even when it's difficult? Even with people who might rub you up the wrong way, how have you done it in enduring or bearing with one another? Last week we talked about honor. I wonder, how have you done? Have you been intentional in honoring people, in putting others before yourself, in appreciating and seeing the worth in other people? I won't ask for hands up, but just something to think about, right? Are we being intentional about? Are we being deliberate? Because this is worked out. It's not just worked out you and Jesus on your own. It's worked out in community. We're going to grow spiritually. We're going to mature as believers in the context of family together, in the context of community together. It doesn't just happen in isolation. It happens in community. And so today we're looking at verse 11. It says, "Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord." So some words there you might not hear very often. So number one, slothful. It's a much more interesting way of saying lazy. So I'm talking to my kids this week. I'm going to say, stop being so slothful. And then we have to, we want to improve their language. So we're talking, it's being lazy, right? They're similar words. Do not be slothful in zeal. And so zeal, it just means great energy, enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective. And then fervent is kind of similar to zeal. It's an intensity, it's a passion, it's a feeling of passion. It can also be translated as like a bubbling up or a boiling. Okay? And hopefully the other words you can get in there. And we see this in various places. So some of you will go. You'll have watched some of the World Cup on TV, right? And you'll see fans in stadiums, or some of you might go to games, or some of you might be into other sports where you'll go to games. And if you're not into sports, because I understand not everyone's into sports, but if you're not into sports, then hopefully you've seen the news where you've seen something, you get to that bit and you haven't quite turned it off yet when it does start talking about sports. And you might have seen the fans, the Argentinian or Moroccan fans at the World Cup, and they're jumping up and down, they're shouting, they're screaming, they're waving, they're singing, chanting, clapping, all these kind of things. That's a fervor that they have. That's a zeal that they have. And I don't know, maybe you're like that, maybe you're not. I'm like that a bit sometimes when I watch sport in our house. And people respond differently to it. And so my daughter, if I'm watching something and I start shouting or jumping up and down, then she kind of looks at me a bit confused or embarrassed. And then my son, if he's watching it, when he was much younger, he would like jump and be scared about what was going on because he was just like as a toddler. But now he kind of jumps up and down with me, even if he has no idea what is going on. But he just likes to get involved, and he kind of enjoys the atmosphere. So he has no idea that Portugal have nearly scored and Morocco are nearly in the quarterfinals or semi-finals of the World Cup. He's just jumping up and down because he's excited because I'm excited, and he sees the zeal in me. And maybe for you it's other things, right? Maybe for you it's you've got some other area of interest, some other hobby that you feel that about. And it's not a bad thing. right? I'm not saying that kind of zeal is good, but if my zeal for football surpasses my zeal for Jesus, then I've got my priorities mixed up, right? So I can see people worshipping in a different temple on a Saturday afternoon at the Amex, and that's all well and good. They can enjoy the game, but what I long to see, what God longs to see, is that zeal even more so for His name and for His glory and for Him. And so that's what we're talking about this morning. We want to be a people who are zealous for Jesus. We don't want to get things mixed up and worship created things rather than the creator of those things. We want to worship the creator. And even in the Bible, we see zeal directed in wrong places. Paul, who is the man who is writing this letter to the church in Rome, he was as zealous as anyone. Before he encountered Jesus, he was a zealous man. But it was directed in the wrong place. His zeal was directed in persecuting Christians and seeking them out and seeing them killed. Right? So he was zealous, but it was an unhealthy zeal, at least for the Christians. The Jewish leaders of the day, we read again in this letter that he writes, they were zealous. They were zealous for what they thought was God or for the law, but they ended up, their zeal was directed in the wrong place, and they ended up killing the creator of the world. They ended up killing God, crucifying him. Paul writes again to another church in Corinth, and they're zealous people. They love the gifts of the Spirit. In 1 Corinthians, you read about it. They love seeing they love the Holy Spirit, love the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Yet Paul writes to them and says that you have no restraint in your worship. That you're not serving God in these things, but you're serving yourself. Right? You can have control in how you use your gifts and how we do things, and you are showing a lack of it. Right, you're misplacing your zeal. You're not serving one another. You're not building one another up. You're not serving the outsider. They're forgetting that the rest of this sentence that we're looking at says, "Do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, serve the Lord." So we want to be zealous, but controlled. We want to be passionate in wanting to see other people encounter God, other people built up. So we can have zeal without action. So we have a couple of dangers. So one is we're zealous, but we don't have any action. A bit like the church that Paul writes to in 1 Corinthians. We can get so caught up. You might call it like super spiritual, or we just get caught up in our relationship with Jesus that we miss the end of this sentence. It doesn't say, do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, and just have a great time by yourself. It says, do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, serve the Lord. Right? So it's not just having a great time on my own with Jesus for its own sake. There's an outworking of it, and it says, serve the Lord. Some of us forget that part. Well, I wonder, how do you work out your love for God? We work out in serving, work it out in getting stuck in. I had a conversation with a guy before COVID, and he'd been around for a little while. And I said to him, it's been great having you about. It'd be great to get you more connected in. We really encourage people to serve. It's a great way to get to know people. And I suggested a few different teams that he could do. Said once a month, it'd be great for you. And he said, I'll pray about it. I'm not sure the Lord's spoken to me about this yet. And I said it very lovingly. I said, great, God has spoken to me about it, and I think the setup team is for you next week. Shall I sign you up? Because not everything. We don't need like an audible voice of God to hear about what we should be doing. It's simple. Paul says, now I'm not saying if you're not serving on a Sunday here, then you're not welcome. You are very welcome, right? We love you to be. But we would encourage you. If this is where you see your family home, if this is your church family, then I would encourage you. Actually, you should get signed up. Serve on a once a month on a Sunday. You can do 2 times a month if you like. I won't stop you. But it's how we build community together. It's a way that we can serve one another in our zeal. Amen. He's not in the church anymore, unfortunately. I was hoping that conversation would have ended with a better end, but unfortunately not. Right, but the other danger is we have some of us. We're not slothful, but we don't have the zeal. Right, so maybe you don't feel particularly zealous about God. You don't feel fervent in your spirit, but you are great at getting through a to-do list. Like you are fantastic at checking things off. You are a doer. But again, the verse here doesn't say it's great to be a doer and don't worry about how you feel about Jesus. Right, we are to be fervent in spirit. God wants you to be zealous for him. He wants you to be boiling, like that word fervent can be translated. He wants you to be boiling and bubbling up for him. It's not just all about get business and getting things done, but God, he wants you to feel something. He wants you to experience him. And we shortchange ourselves by saying, well, I'm just a practical kind of guy. I'm not really a feelings guy. So I'll get on with stuff, but the Holy Spirit stuff, I don't need that kind of zeal in my life. I'm just happy getting on. No, I'd encourage you, if you kind of resonate with that, I'd encourage you, pray, Holy Spirit, I want to experience more of you in my life. I want to grab hold, as we've been kind of come out through our week of prayer, I want to grab hold of you. I want to grab hold of what you have done for me and experience life and life to the full. I want you to boil within me. Likewise, if you're at the other end of that spectrum, if you're a bit too super spirit, if you're all zealous but without any action, without any application, man, pray, God, help me to serve, help me to get involved with what's going on, help me to see what you have put right in front of me, what have you have put for my hand to do. But maybe you don't feel either of those things, right? Maybe you're sitting here this morning and you think you've done your bit in just turning up. Like you've turned up and that is you done now. You can sit and that was a big effort. And maybe for some of you it was. Right, life is difficult, and just don't expect more of me than coming and sitting on a chair on a Sunday morning. Right, I love Jesus, but life is just a bit, just so. Or you feel like you have to be here more than you get to be here. Or it's like well, come on, kids, you've asked if we can go to church this morning, so let's get in the car, I suppose. But that sofa does look inviting, and there is that Netflix series I'd like to finish off. But come on, okay, fine. Right, maybe life is more like that for you at the moment. Right, surviving just from Sunday to Sunday, and in between is just this kind of spiritual wasteland where you just feel distant from God. And so that's the danger, isn't it? Because if that is how we're living, then if we don't get anything on a Sunday, if you've lived like that Monday to Saturday this last week, and you come on Sunday and you don't get anything out of it, right? If the worship's not what you want, or if the preacher's not that good, or if the host doesn't make you feel welcome, or if the coffee doesn't taste very nice, then what have you got? How are you going to survive the next 6 days before potentially you might get someone better speaking on the stage on a Sunday, you might get someone nicer greeting you at the door. Right, that's the danger of living in that way, of just giving Jesus 2 hours on a Sunday morning, or maybe 3 hours if you're serving. Right, we've talked a lot about wanting to be a God-first people. That way of living is the opposite. That's a God last. That's I'll give God something of my time, but I'm just going to get all my other stuff done first. We want to be a God-first people. At the beginning of the chapter we've been reading from these last few weeks, in verses 1 to 2, Paul says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Right, Christianity is not a Sunday morning. That is an incredibly cheap imitation of what Jesus calls us to. He calls us for our whole lives to be worship to him, to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, that we may not be conformed to this world and take on the culture of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of our mind, by taking the culture of heaven and living in that day to day as we're made more and more like Jesus. And so the job of a Sunday morning as we together here as in this larger family gathering is not just to warm us all up a bit in our faith so we can survive the next 6 days. Right? Actually, I'd love us to come having met with God in our weeks, to have been in a group where we can be encouraged and pointed to Jesus and challenged. Last week we had our week of prayer, which is great, but we don't have those every week. So we don't have 30 or 40 people each night to get alongside us and pray and encourage us and read scripture together. Boy, it has been, but when we do have that, I'd encourage you to get along. We've had a fantastic week this last week praying together. But we want to come on a Sunday having met with God, right, ready to worship because we're zealous for Him, where we can build one another up. We can build one another up using our gifts, serving one another. We're built together, and as we do this, the bonus is as we're built together, as we use our gifts to serve one another, we get to welcome in people from outside. We get to welcome guests in, and they get to experience what it is like to be in this family. And in the New Testament, in 1 Corinthians, Paul says, when you invite outsiders in, when the Holy Spirit is at work in that place, they will fall on their faces and worship and say, God is among you. Right, that's my prayer for our Sunday mornings. As we worship, just as Theo and the band have been pointing us to Jesus as we've sung, as we open our Bibles, as we do all of these things, that our guests would encounter God in this place. And they would say, Jesus, God is among you. Right, I may not understand it all, but God is here. And when we realize how much God has done for us, how He has loved us in sending His Son to redeem us, to rescue us from the pit that we were in, it should stir a zeal, it should stir a passion in us. It should put us on our knees. It should make us dependent on Him in our day-to-day, presenting our lives as a living sacrifice, saying, I want to be obedient to you, Jesus. I want to hear your voice. I want to go where you're going. I want to do what you're doing. Because Jesus, He was zealous. Right? He was boiling with such passion for God's glory, for such love for you and for me, that He endured the cross so we can know Him. Right, so we can come into His presence where we were once separated. He removed the barrier, and we can come into His presence as sons and daughters. Right, He didn't die for you and me so we can just go through the motions. He died for us so that we might have life and life to the full. So if you're a guest this morning, that's what is on offer to you. Right, what Jesus offers is not just come on a Sunday and feel better about yourself for a bit and sing some songs, maybe chat to some people, hear someone read a bit from the Bible, maybe you'll pray. Actually, He offers us something to give our lives to. Right? He offers us something to give our whole selves to, something that requires a zealousness and a fervency, something that won't happen unless you have the Spirit of God at work within you, allowing God to be first in every area of our lives. Right? Without Him, we can't do any of this. Without Him, we are unable to have a culture of love where we can bear with one another. Without God, we are unable to honor one another. We're unable to do that fully, putting other people, outdoing one another and showing honor, putting other people before us, seeing worth even in people who don't like us or speak badly about us. And without Him, we'd be slothful in zeal. We are not able to be fervent in spirit and serve the Lord. Right, if that's going to be the culture of us as a church family together, if it's going to be the culture of this place, then we need God to show up and help us, because we're just not that good. We can't do it on our own. And the good news is, I was reading something this week and I was reminded of Revelation 3. And there's good news for us, because Revelation 3 is God talking to the church in Laodicea, and it says this: I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. Would that you were either cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. That's not the good news bit, by the way. The good news bit's coming. Right, so if we're lukewarm, if we're not bubbling with a fervency for Jesus, if we're not zealous for Him, then we dishonor God. But the incredible compassion of Jesus is when you read down a few verses and it says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me." Right? So their lukewarmness, their lack of zeal, their lack of fervency, he says a few verses earlier, "I would spit you out of my mouth." Right? It revolted, their lukewarmness revolted him, yet here we have Jesus waiting outside the door, patiently knocking, longing to be freshly invited in to the heart of anyone who would respond, anyone who would hear his voice. Band, if you want to come up. I wonder, is that you this morning? Maybe, I don't know which category you fall into, whether you're one of the doers, you're zealous but without much action, or you just feel like just life is too much. You've lost your zeal for God, or maybe you're on fire for God. Amazing. That's incredible. But we need each of you, but we don't want each of you we don't want to stay as we are. If we are not feeling, right, if we don't know the love of God in our heart, if we've become lukewarm, there's an invitation to us this morning. Right? It says here, Jesus is standing at the door, knocking, waiting to be invited in. Jesus wants to meet with us this morning. Right? He wants to remind us of his love and of his acceptance, his ability to rekindle passion. Just to remind us, we love God because he first loved us. Our zeal isn't something that we work up on our own, but it's a response to his zeal. We can't manufacture it, despite however nicely Theo plays on the guitar, or however well Rachel sings. We can try our best, but we won't end up with anything genuine if we just try and whip up in ourselves a love for God. Actually, we love because he first loved us. Our zeal is a response to him. And so this morning, I want to invite us to be, my prayer is that we would be caught up again in God's love for us. Right, that he would stir in us a delight for him because of how he delights in us. That we would be able to say with David in the Psalms, zeal for your house consumes me. That we could say with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength that we love God with all of it. Right, that God would make us more and more a God-first people, more and more zealous for his name, for his glory, for his church, and for people to come to know him. Charles Spurgeon, who's a church leader and preacher in the 19th century, said this: "I would sooner risk the dangers of a tornado of religious excitement than see the air grow stagnant with a dead formality." Right, let's be known as a zealous church family together. Let's be known as people who are passionate for Jesus, who want us, and in their passion, they want to serve the Lord. Right? Let's go for a culture of zeal in this place. Can I invite you to stand and we're going to sing together?